Today, we're going to talk about one of the biggest cancers in the comedy community. No, I'm not talking about the wildly cringy podcast cringe YouTube commentary channel. Today, I'm talking about the anti-comedy journalist known as good old Seth Sex Pest Simons. Firstly, I'd like to thank the executive producer of this episode, Christopher Hart. Without Christopher's big baller support, I'd probably be in a downtown near you with a sign saying, "Kick me in the nuts for $5. And sure, I'd wear some sort of cup. And maybe it'll protect my nuts, but it's gonna bruise around. Cause it's still being forced into my body, just around it. And I do bruise easy. But thanks to Christopher Hart's big baller support, I don't need to do that. And if you'd like to become a big baller supporter to the show, you can go ahead and click the Patreon link in the description below. Welcome to Catching You Up with
the Nadav, it's Oakerson.
Nice. Still got it. So I wanted to make an episode about a really dark time in comedy history. And that's when Shane Gillis got fired from SNL a day or two after it was announced that he was part of the cast. And the reason that happened is because of Seth Sex Pest Simons. He calls himself a comedy journalist, but if you read a lot of his articles, you would understand very quickly this guy doesn't like comedy at all. He'd pretty much go out of his way to try and cancel comedians that he didn't like their jokes. And he succeeded at least one of those times when he got Shane fired from SNL. Excuse me, Seth Sex Pest Simons. I don't call him that, but allegedly there are women in his circle that were hit on by him that called him that. Yikes. Talk about someone who doesn't know how to pick up on social cues. I'm starting to see a bit of a pattern with Seth Sex Pest Simons. Imagine trying to establish a career on a moral high horse, only to have any woman that's willing to speak publicly about you call you an ick generator supreme that just dries up every woman around him. Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing about that as hard as I am. I honestly do hate that there are men out there that put women in really uncomfortable situations, and that men like Seth exist in our world just walking amongst us. I wondered what he was up to these days, so I googled him, and I found that he's literally writing about the same shit, but the LA Times somehow is letting him write for them. I wonder if they know that they have a sex pest writing for them. Hey, LA Times, do you know that you have a sex pest writing for you? But anyways, I googled Seth and saw what articles he's writing, and lo and behold, the article is about Seth being butthurt that Shane was asked to host SNL after he worked so hard to get him fired. Absolutely hilarious. What's even more hilarious, in the first paragraph, Seth hyperlinks to a time code in an episode of Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast that I believe is a Patreon episode where he is sharing a very edgy, very self-deprecating story about himself. And Seth uses that without context to try and take SNL away from him for a second time. He opens the LA Times article with this. The comedian Shane Gillis, who will host Saturday Night Live this week, has described himself as racist. That's the term he uses in a 2017 episode of his podcast, Matt and Shane's Secret Podcast, currently the most popular show on Patreon. Man, most popular show on Patreon? There must be a lot of racists on there. Or, racist sympathizers. What's funny to me is that if you go a couple paragraphs down, Seth Simons links another LA Times article as the article that got Shane fired from SNL originally, but that article just links to Seth Simons' posts about shit. It's indirectly taking credit or just citing yeah, I'm the guy, but I'm gonna, instead of saying how I did it the first time, I'm gonna say this other guy did it, so that it's a little bit, you gotta connect some dots to know that really I'm behind all this. That paragraph reads, when SNL hired Gillis as a featured player in 2019, the Vulnerable comedy series quickly discovered what exactly he was toning down. Within hours of the casting announcement, journalists uncovered racist, homophobic, and transphobic comments Gillis made on his podcast the previous year, including a slur for Chinese people and lengthy gripes about the same. And then in parentheses, I published several of these clips, though I cannot take credit for finding them. A comedian sent them to me. And the word uncovered is hyperlinked to the LA Times article that uses Seth Simons clips. The article is written by Matt Brennan, and the first paragraph reads, Shane Gillis, one of 3 performers added to the cast of Saturday Night Live on Thursday, used a racist slur in a September 2018 episode of Matt and Shane's secret podcast, as shown in a video resurfaced on Twitter by comedy journalist Seth Sexpest Simons. Good thing Seth Simons took credit for not taking credit finding those clips. The article by Brennan continues. Late Thursday, Gillis posted a statement on Twitter saying he's happy to apologize to anyone actually offended by anything I've said, but not in fact going so far as to apologize. At the time that this article was written, some people seemed to be upset at Shane for not apologizing to white people for making a joke not about white people. Wild. But this episode isn't about Matt Brennan. It's about Seth Sexpest Simons. All in all, maybe it's just that Seth understood that if it bleeds, it leads. But for being a comedy journalist, it sure does seem like he doesn't like or understand comedy. And for someone that's representing themselves as an authority on comedy, this is what Seth Simons thinks is funny, and this really is a video of him.
Hello, I'm Seth Simons, director of the Exolano Project. This is a spoken bird poem. It's called Bird. Caw! Caw! Caw-caw! Coo! Coo! Eagle, eagle, eagle. Thank you. That last one was a mockingbird imitating an eagle.
This is him, and it's still up on YouTube for you to find. Was this an attempt at comedy? Was this an avant-garde performance piece? Regardless of which side of the fence it falls on, objectively, that sucked. I'm embarrassed about this for him. Here's Shane Gillis talking about Seth while he was podcasting with Kurt Metzger.
When he did his spoken bird poetry, Seth Simon, I could see I was like, that guy's got something sinister behind his eyes. Like, he's like an angry, like the rage and anger in that bird joke.
Yeah.
And it's not because of the topic or something. It's just, I can see the guy who came up with it.
Yeah, he's a little tiny guy. He's a little tiny guy that, like, I've seen footage of their shows. People always send me shit of his. And it's like him, like, he like bosses people around, kind of.
Yeah, of course.
He's like very controlling of, he's like,
there's no
the microphone.
Yeah, there's
That's
no
how he
way
talks.
that guy's, he does, really? How?
He's like, oh, no.
Seth Simons even had a beef with some of my favorite New York comedians who host the Legion of Skanks podcast, Louis J. Gomez, Big J. Oakerson, and Dave Smith, which was hilarious. In 2021, he wrote an article for NewRepublic.com entitled, "The comedy industry has a big alt-right problem." It reads, "Today, Legion of Skanks holds considerable sway in comedy. With a massive platform, it's lent everyone who's anyone in the New York club scene while remaining true to its far-right roots. In 2019, it hosted Milo Yiannopoulos after his fall from grace. In 2018, Gomez angrily chased a fan out of a recording when the man pointed out a Proud Boy in the audience. Smith, a Nazi sympathizer who believes Jews run forces that are killing the society, has become a powerful voice in the right flank of the Libertarian Party." It's crazy to me to say that a podcast hosted by 2 Jews and a Puerto Rican were attempted to be flagged as like the image of the alt-right comedy scene. Like, that's crazy. And here's the thing with Legion of Skanks getting crazy guests like Milo Yiannopoulos. They'll talk with anyone because conflict equals good show, which is maybe something that Seth Sexpest Simons doesn't understand the difference between stand-up comedy and comedy podcasts. You need to fill up the hour with something that you haven't spent a year or two sharpening and honing on the road. So if all of a sudden you get word, oh shit, Milo Yiannopoulos is down with being on the show, you're gonna talk to him and try and figure out why he's as crazy as he is. Not only do they have Milo Yiannopoulos on, they've had Alex Jones on, they've had Martin Shkreli on. the guy who increased the price on AIDS medication, which is crazy. And although they had fun with him, they absolutely called him out on his shitty behavior. And guess who the person was that did that? Spoiler alert, it was Shane Gillis.
So it's still fucking expensive as fuck, your shit.
No, it's gotten generic, so there's generics now, to my chagrin. And
Did you
still own it?
It's a long story.
Wait, to your chagrin? Why don't you want people to get medicine?
I want people to get medicine. You're confused.
He's telling
I am
you.
confused.
But he is,
Sounds like I'm confused, but you did go to jail, so I think me and the judge are on the same page.
I think the people who end up being federal judges and federal prosecutors were the people who were hall monitors in high school. And
yeah, but the people who raise the price of AIDS medication are fucking dorks, dude. That sucks.
That's the thing about comedy podcasts that I think professional comedy journalist Seth Sexpest Simons doesn't understand, is that they're trying to make good, interesting show. When Milo Yiannopoulos was on, Alex Jones was on, Martin Shkreli was on, I absolutely told my friends and coworkers about it because it was crazy to get a guest like that. But every episode of Legion of Skanks is 3 comedians and their guests trying to take wild swings to make an audience filled with comedy fans laugh. It's like when Seth Sexpest Simons tries to report on anything that these comedians do, he is removing the fact that all this is happening in a comedy club, that there's 3 comedians on stage, that there's an audience full of comedy fans that are watching it. Instead, he reports on it as if all of these are members of the Senate and writing the laws that will dictate your grandchildren's future. They're not. They're comics trying to go for a laugh in front of an audience that wants to laugh at their jokes. So keep in mind that article that Seth wrote entitled "The Comedy Scene Has a Serious Alt-Right Problem" didn't only talk shit on the Legion of Skanks, but also some people that ran The Stand, which is a huge comedy club in New York. And if you read the article that Seth wrote about the alt-right problem, there is a note from the editor that was posted a year after the article was posted. And it says this: following publication of the below article, an anonymous writer published an essay claiming to have tricked this article's author, freelance writer Seth Simons, into believing that a forum user known as toxic cis white male fat was comedy club owner Chris Italia. Although the New Republic was unable to reach the anonymous writer to verify the claims in that essay, all indications are that Mr. Simons was catfished. Thus, we have updated the article to remove references to the mole mentioned as a source, as well as all language suggesting that Mr. Italia might be toxic cis white male fat. The evidence for which is now clear was bogus. To the extent that the article linked hateful speech to Mr. Italia, any such attribution was in error. This article did not meet the New Republic standards, and we apologize to Mr. Italia and our readers for not fact-checking it more thoroughly. To me, it's wild that such a journalist who prides himself in journalizing about comedy could get tricked like a fucking idiot. And since the mole that was viewed as a source in the article was removed, guess what? Everything he wrote in that article is now completely baseless. What a schmuck. And to further argue against Seth Simons' points in almost every single one of his articles, I'm going to now show a clip from the late and great Patrice O'Neill.
So I'm gonna speak as the expert on funny. Funny people should just be left to trying to be funny.
What if they're not funny?
Then you made a mistake. But how many times has how many unfunny rape jokes lead to rape? Like,
I don't know how many jokes about rape there are.
There's a lot. But your world is not funny. Your world is next on the big story. My world is people trying to be funny.
Well, I mean, you think it's okay to try to make jokes about rape?
I'm diabetic. I make fun of that. I'm a victim. I might lose a toe. But I'm trying to make fun of. I'm trying to make fun of anything I think I can make fun of.
And Chris Italia, who was mentioned by Seth Simons in that article, wrote a very lengthy article, pretty much just taking Seth apart piece by piece, But this was my favorite part from it. What confirmed my suspicions that he grew up a rich kid was when he went on the Comedy Cellar podcast, and while arguing with the owner, Noam Dworman, the following interaction occurred. Noam asks, "Do you think I'm racist?" Seth responds, "Of course you are racist. I'm racist. All white men are racist." Not only does this confirm to me that he grew up the way he grew up, but it also confirms he hates his dad and himself. He feels guilty that he grew up with more. To make a statement in which you categorize a whole segment of the population as racist shows that without a doubt, you are someone that can't be trusted as a person and certainly cannot be an objective journalist. Get fucked, Seth. I mean, this stuff is just wild. This guy is claiming to be a comedy journalist, but all he really does is go into any popular comedy lane and find the comedian that's getting away with risque jokes that he wouldn't have been able to get away with and just be like, guys, on paper, this joke is terrible. But then if you actually watch how that joke is delivered, you're being like, no, I see what they were going for. Like, they were attempting to be funny. And what Seth doesn't realize, what Seth Sex Pest Simons doesn't realize is that intention has a lot to do with being edgy in your jokes. Oh yeah, and to circle back to the whole sex pest thing, I know I'm saying it a lot, but he was labeled as a creep by women that he knew. God, I really gotta stop laughing when I say that, because it's not a funny matter. Being a creep to women is not funny. Maybe that's what Seth thinks is funny, and that's why he thinks he's an authority on comedy, is because he thinks making women feel uncomfortable is funny, allegedly. And here's Louis J. Gomez wrapping up some thoughts on how bad Seth Simons is at his job.
How old is this kid? He's young, right?
I think so. I don't know.
I have the tweet that the girl tweeted. Do you want me to
pull
share
it up? Sure.
But her Twitter's gone now, right?
Yeah, she deleted her Twitter. Lots of comedy creeps out there.
I don't understand what he thinks the final outcome of writing a bad an article about you. Like, your fans are gonna be like, this guy fucking sucks.
We know. They've listened to me say all the things that he's saying. He like quotes us and like, you're taking it from my. It's not a hidden conversation, dumbass.
Yeah, it's like,
it's
I want
podcast.
more people to see this. That's what you're
put
doing.
It out.
Yeah,
you're
this isn't the Nixon tapes.
Yeah, what are you talking about? He put like, look, in this clip from Legion of Skanks episode. Yeah, okay, that's my clip. Look, we're making jokes, right, in that moment. But there is a nuanced conversation there, and this is the problem, I think, with doing shows like this is, in 1 minute we're having a real conversation, and we're, actually giving real opinions, and then the next minute we're saying something sarcastic.
You're making a pun or something stupid, of course.
So it's like you can't take any of these conversations out of context. It's really irresponsible. If you're trying to be a fucking journalist, dude, you're being extraordinarily irresponsible.
And with that, all I really can say is that Seth Simons is one of the biggest fupas in the comedy scene. That stands for fat upper pussy area. And to just draw a parallel of how bad Seth is at his job, let's take a look at mixed martial arts. Ariel Helwani. Whatever you want to say about him, that guy genuinely loves MMA. I love watching anything with Ariel in it. I love hearing Ariel's insights on MMA. I love seeing him interact with other mixed martial artists. And the thing is that he reports on how much he loves it, how excited he is for matches. And sure, every now and then he'll have, some notes to share about the way Dana White operates certain things. But at the end of the day, you could tell he loves the subject matter that he reports on. Seth Simons does not do that. And this has been a quick recap on an arc in the comedy scene that I think is worth reporting on, because if any attempted cancellations come out in the future, especially posted in the LA Times, written by Seth Simons, I just want everyone to know a little bit more about him, because he absolutely sucks and dries up every pussy that is aware of him, allegedly. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone that you're seeing on screen right now. They are producers of the show and subscribe to the Patreon. They get episodes a day early. And without their help, it'd be much harder to put this show out as regularly and consistently as I do. And if you'd like to become a supporter of the show, you can go ahead and click the Patreon link in the description below. Now's a good time to remind you to comment, like, and subscribe. It all helps the algorithm. But most importantly, I'd like to remind you,
this is a totally unconfirmed news.
See you next week.